15 drones cut through the night air in perfect silence, their engines humming just loud enough to exist, but too faint to give them away. There were no pilots, no voices, no hesitation, just a steady stream of coordinates pulling them forward toward a target that had already been selected long before they ever left the ground. Each one was an FP-1, a machine built with a single purpose: travel far, stay cheap, and hit hard. They weren't impressive at first glance. Plywood frames, simple engines, nothing that screamed advanced technology. But that was exactly the point. They didn't need to be advanced when they could be deployed in numbers. Losing one didn't matter. Losing 5 didn't matter. What mattered was that even if only one made it through, the damage would justify the entire mission. And that was the real problem. Traditional air defense systems weren't designed for this kind of threat. They were built to stop fast jets, missiles, high-value targets, not swarms of low-cost drones flying low and steady through the dark. For months, these drones had been slipping through defenses that were never meant to handle them, forcing an entire military to adapt in real time. And tonight looked no different. The swarm moved forward with confidence, untouched, unchallenged, completely unaware that this time, something had already positioned itself to intercept them. Off to the side of the formation, barely noticeable against the darkness, a small aircraft kept pace without drawing attention. It wasn't fast, it wasn't modern, and it definitely wasn't designed for combat. It was a Yak-52, a training plane from another era, built to teach new pilots the basics of flight. But tonight, it wasn't training anyone. It was hunting. What made it dangerous wasn't speed or technology, it was simplicity. While modern fighter jets would struggle to slow down enough to engage targets like these drones, the Yak did the opposite. It slowed down just enough to match them. It didn't rush in for a quick pass. It didn't need to. It simply moved into position behind the swarm and stayed there, almost casually, as if it belonged. And then came the unexpected part. Mounted under its wing was a shotgun. Not a missile system, not a high-tech weapon, just a 12-gauge shotgun adapted for the air. At close range, it didn't need precision targeting systems or complex guidance. The spread alone was enough. The pilot lined up carefully, closed the distance, and fired. The first drone absorbed the damage but kept going, its structure just resilient enough to hold together. The second wasn't so lucky. A hit to the propeller tore it apart instantly, sending it spiraling into the darkness below. Shot after shot followed, each one simple, direct, and brutally effective. Expensive drones were falling to ammunition that cost almost nothing. And by the time the weapon ran dry, the swarm was already weaker than it had been minutes before. As the surviving drones pushed further out over open water, something subtle began to change. There was no explosion, no visible threat, nothing that would immediately trigger alarm. But their path, once straight and predictable, started to shift. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, like a minor error that could easily be ignored. But it wasn't an error. It was deliberate. Instead of blocking the drones' navigation systems, something was feeding them false information. GPS signals, the very system guiding them across hundreds of kilometers, had been quietly replaced with a stronger, more convincing lie. The drones didn't question it, they followed it. From the operator's perspective, everything looked normal for a few critical seconds. That delay was all it took. By the time the drift became obvious, the drones were already off course, moving toward positions they were never supposed to reach. Some lost altitude unexpectedly and struck the water. Others continued flying in the wrong direction, burning through fuel they couldn't afford to waste. No missiles were fired, no defenses visibly activated, and yet drones were disappearing. It was a different kind of attack, one that didn't rely on destruction but on manipulation. And it was working. By the time the system corrected itself and switched to backup navigation, the formation had already been reduced again, and the ones that remained were no longer flying as a coordinated group. They were scattered, vulnerable, and heading straight into another layer of defense they couldn't yet see. The next threat didn't announce itself. It didn't appear on radar screens or trigger any warning systems. It simply closed the distance from behind, faster than anything the surviving drones had encountered so far. This wasn't a missile or a manned aircraft. It was another drone, but built for interception, designed specifically to hunt down targets like these and eliminate them mid-flight. It didn't need complex instructions. Its system locked onto the heat signature of the drone's engine and followed it with relentless precision. One moment, the drone existed. The next, it didn't. The impact was immediate, leaving nothing behind but fragments falling into the dark below. Another interceptor moved in, tracking its target just as effectively. But then something unexpected happened. One of the drone operators reacted quickly, forcing their drone down to an extremely low altitude just meters above the water's surface. The environment changed instantly. The heat from the ocean created interference, disrupting the interceptor's ability to maintain a lock. The system struggled to distinguish the drone from the background. And just like that, the hunter lost its advantage. It overshot and crashed into the sea. It was a rare moment of survival, but it came with a cost. Flying that low meant losing visibility. The drone was still alive, but now it was navigating blind, with no clear path forward. With the formation broken and defenses closing in, the remaining drones were no longer operating as a unified group. Each one was now effectively on its own, guided manually by operators who were dealing with delayed video feeds and rapidly decreasing fuel levels. Every movement required correction, and every correction came too late. A half-second delay might not seem significant, but at their speed, it meant covering dozens of meters before the operator could even react. Steering became guesswork, with adjustments constantly overshooting or undershooting the intended path. Meanwhile, the drones began converging toward the same coastline, drawn to the few visible landmarks that could still guide them. What had once been a spread-out formation was now funneling into a tighter corridor, making their approach more predictable and more dangerous. Fuel levels were dropping fast. What should have been a comfortable margin was now barely enough to complete the mission. Every second mattered. Every decision carried weight, and just ahead, the target area came into view. For the first time since leaving the open water, the operators could see where they were going. But reaching the target was only part of the challenge, because waiting for them was a defense system that, on paper, should have stopped them all. The port was fully equipped to handle incoming threats. Radar systems were tracking every remaining drone, calculating trajectories, and preparing firing solutions with precision. Everything was working exactly as designed. But then came the hesitation. Engaging the drones at that range carried a serious risk. The area was surrounded by critical infrastructure, fuel tanks, pipelines, vessels loaded with combustible material. A single missed shot could trigger a disaster far greater than the attack itself. And so the order came through: do not fire. That decision shifted the responsibility entirely to the warship's onboard systems. Missiles were launched, rising into the sky with speed and accuracy, heading toward their targets exactly as programmed. But something was wrong. They didn't connect. They reached the predicted intercept points, but the drones weren't there anymore. The system had calculated perfectly, but it was working with outdated information. A previous strike had already damaged the ship's ability to guide those missiles in real time. Without continuous correction, the missiles were essentially chasing where the drones had been seconds earlier. And in a scenario where even a slight delay mattered, that gap was enough for the drones to slip through untouched. What followed wasn't a coordinated defense, it was fragmentation. Systems that were meant to work together were now operating independently, each one reacting to incomplete or delayed information. Guns were aimed based on visual sightings that were already outdated by the time they were communicated. Missiles were launched based on calculations that no longer applied. Operators were forced to make decisions without a full picture of the situation. It wasn't a failure of individual components, they were all functioning. It was a failure of coordination. Without communication linking everything together, the entire defense structure began to collapse into confusion. Targets were missed, opportunities were lost, and gaps began to form. And those gaps were exactly what the remaining drones needed. They didn't break through a solid defense. They slipped through the cracks of one that was no longer functioning as a system. By the time anyone could react effectively, it was already too late. The drones were inside the port. 6 drones made it through to the final stage. Each one was running on the last of its fuel, with only seconds left before failure. The operators guiding them were fully focused, making constant adjustments as the drones navigated through a dense and dangerous environment filled with obstacles on all sides. Large structures, anchored ships, and narrow pathways forced precise movements, even under pressure. There was no room for error. One wrong input, one delayed correction, and the drone would miss its target entirely. 4 of them did. Whether due to timing, positioning, or simple miscalculation, they failed to connect. But 2 stayed on course. One closed the distance, its camera filled with the image of the warship ahead, growing larger with every passing second. There was no final adjustment, no hesitation, just impact. The screen went white. And in that moment, everything that had happened, from the first interception to the final approach, led to a single result. 15 drones had started the mission. Only 2 finished it, but that was enough.